Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, before we get too far in, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to promote my channel. I also love it if you leave a comment, that really helps as well. So one of the projects I have not gotten around to doing on YouTube here is to make a traditional solitaire ring with a 4-prong setting made out of flat stock. So I'm going to attempt to do that today. It's actually one that I've not done before, so it'll kind of be an experiment for me as well. I think I have a plan on how to do it, and we'll see how it turns out. I picked out a nice kind of pale citrine, more of a lemon quartz sort of citrine, and I think it'll be super pretty sitting up high like that. Before we get started though, I need to thank some people. I wanted to thank my newest patron, Karen F. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate your support. I look forward to getting to know you over there, and I hope you enjoy all of the nice and knowledgeable people who've become a part of that group over there. I learn a lot from them in our interactions, and I hope that you do too. Thank you to all my previous patrons as well. I really appreciate your support. The other group I wanted to thank is my YouTube subscribers. If you aren't one of those, maybe you should become one. We're getting close to 9,000. I think we're at 8,700 and something, which is awesome. That kind of blows me away. So I wanted to thank my YouTube subscribers. If you're not one of those, maybe you should become one. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. I appreciate not only the kind words and the great suggestions and things, I also appreciate your generosity when you make a donation, like through Buy Me a Coffee or the Super Thanks. Those things are great and help out a lot with supplies. Thanks for all of those things. I really appreciate it. All right, well, let's see if we can pull this off today. Let's look at the stone first. It's actually got a checkerboard top on it. It's a nice citrine. It's kind of pale, more of a lemony color. And it's, I think, if I remember, it was about a 7mm. It's pretty deep too, so that may complicate my setting a little bit, but I think we can work it out. But it's a nice sparkly stone, so I think it'll be pretty. This is my design idea book where I draw things up. Not too far. There we go. That's kind of a basic idea. This is kind of modeled after a ring that my wife has. I think it might have been her mom's engagement ring, but it's a very simple, small. Hers is in gold, white gold, I think. But I'm going to do kind of something very similar. So square wire that's been tapered a little bit, and I'm going to use 12 gauge sterling square wire for that. For these parts of the prong, I'm going to actually build a prong from scratch with 4 like this. I'm going to use. You could use just regular old sheet. I'm going to use some it's a 14 gauge square wire that I rolled through my rolling mill until it was pretty flat, like about 0.03 inches, which equates to about 0.762 millimeters. I'm reading upside down, sorry. And that works out pretty well, I think, to make these little these parts here that go up like that. So this is the size of the stone that I drew, and I'll use that kind of as a gauge and how to make my little V shape here. So we'll do 2 of those. I'll put on the bottom of this one, I'm going to put a notch going up, and on the top of this one, a notch going down, so we can fit them together and solder them into a cross-like configuration. It's pretty small. We'll have to do some dremeling and some filing by hand to get those just the right shape, but I don't think it's going to be too hard. The band itself will be easy. I haven't decided if I'm going to put any decorations on it. We'll see. Kind of play that one by ear. So really the only 2 materials you need are, this is going to be 12 gauge square, and I cut a piece of that already to the length I need it. This is about 21 millimeters diameter, which it's going to make about a size 7, I think. So I multiplied it times pi to get basically 66 millimeters. It was 65 point something. So I rounded it up to 66 and cut it that length. So we'll make the band out of that. We'll make the prong settings out of this. And so let's real quick make that band, and then we'll start work on the prong settings. If you've never been to my channel, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. And I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux that I spray on with a spray bottle. And let me put this stone away so I don't lose it. Okay, to start with, I already filed the ends nice and flat. Well, pretty flat. You could use a miter vise jig if you want on this step, if you have one of those. Alright. You're bending square wire like this, it always wants to twist on you because it's trying to find an easier way to make the bend that you're doing, because it's compressing the inside and stretching the outside, so it tries to turn sideways to make it easier. So you got to kind of like play with it and adjust it as you go. If you switch it back and forth like that, sometimes it takes care of some of that. I may have cut this big. We'll see. Okay, let's solder that. I have a little bit of solder left over from yesterday's project, so just use that. I do a lot of pick soldering, which is where I pick up bits of solder on my soldering pick, wherever it went. This is a soldering pick, and it makes it easy to place a piece of solder in a precise location. If you're a beginner, this is probably not a project for you. I do have lots of beginner projects though, so check the playlists on my channel page. There's lots of beginner projects. I'm just going to tap this out roundish. I wouldn't normally do this on the table like this. I just wanted you to be able to see what I was doing a little bit. I usually set it on my knee. Oh, I actually measured it to an 8. I forgot about that. I was thinking I was going to do a 7, but clean up on that. I was originally going to do a 7, then I realized this is a pretty good sized stone, and so I was going to make a more substantial ring. So I'm doing more of an 8. I'm going to try and tap this perfectly flat, just lightly. Alright, I was thinking, ouch. I was thinking I was going to flatten it in 2 dimensions a little bit. So on the top, I want to thin it out so it kind of is narrower at the top and a little bit wider in this dimension at the bottom. So in order to do that, it's kind of like, let's see where the solder joint is. I'll put the solder joint on the bottom. So this will be the top side right up here, from here to here, and that'll be the bottom side. So let's kind of flatten this and make sure it's round. So we're going to flatten it just a little bit up here. And this part, the other side, I marked that so I could make a mark for where the setting's going to go straight across from that. That's better. That's right at an 8. So that's where I'm going to leave it. And that's kind of where the setting's going to mount. So the challenging part on this is going to be not the band so much as the setting. Did a prototype, and then I'm going to build one in front of you, hopefully. It's going to look kind of like this. So it's got flat stock, basically this 14 gauge that I've flattened down to about 0.03 inches or 0.7-ish millimeters, 0.88 millimeters. And then like I said, I slotted them together like that and soldered them together. So, and then this will be mounting kind of right on top of this. I may not have it sit up quite that high. I'll probably file this down some so it sits a little bit lower. Or even file a notch into this. I'm not sure yet. I think I'll probably just file this shorter, but we'll see. So then we'll see if we can't get it on there straight, and see if our ring doesn't turn out pretty nice. I think it will if we can pull this off. Let's see. I did this morning, so we'll see if I can pull it off a second time. If not, I have a backup. So, all right. So to start with, normally if I want to make a sharp bend in some wire, I'll use the 90-degree angle on the edge of the file like that to file an angle going into the wire that I want to bend sharply, so I can bend it upwards. But okay, hopefully you can see that, but I filed it, pretty close, about 2/3 of the way through this, and into a 90-degree V like that. So when I go to bend it like this, we end up with a 90-degree angle. Now, that angle is not steep enough for what we're doing here, so I need to make it a little bit wider of an angle, and it's kind of a little bit of a, there may be some formula to this, but I don't know what it is. If you do, leave it in the comments for me. That would make my life easier. But I need to make sure there's enough coming off of this side before I start filing a notch in this. So that should be plenty if I go about right there. And I'll start it kind of at that 90-degree angle like that, or where it's going to create a 90-degree angle. I'm holding the file at a 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to start steepening the angle on both sides. You can brace this against something if you need to. So instead of a 90, that's more like 132. Let's see how close that is to. Just going to grab this and gently bend it that way. That's a little bit too much, I think. So rather than try to make that work, I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to do it again with a slightly lower angle. I think that'll work. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll just use a little bit of this solder and pick solder that closed. kind of see where that's going to sit there. I can kind of get an idea about where those, the girdle of the stone is going to be what's going to be catching it. So, and that needs to be up just a little bit. I need to have room for the pavilion down here to sit in that little crook. And so let's mark it about right there. That'll be where the girdle goes. And I want it to be straight across over here, so let's try and get that as close as we can to that. We could measure if you want. Now I need to remember not to cut it off there, because that's where the girdle is going to be notched into. I need a little bit above it, so I'm just going to trim off above it. Like. I think that'll be fine. I'll be able to adjust these in or out just slightly if I need to. So that gives me a little bit of leeway, I think. So let's try and duplicate this, and then we'll start carving them with the file and with my Dremel. And then we'll add a notch on both of them. So I'll try to duplicate this now. I think I finally ran out of little pieces of solder. Cut myself a little bit more. Some common questions people ask me is what torch do I use and what size tip do I use. This is a Silversmith model acetylene air torch, and I generally use a #1 tip on it. The other question I get super frequently is what are these shears? And they're just Fisker's craft shears. So most of the hobby stores around here carry them. You probably get them at Target or something too. None of those places or Fisker's are my sponsor though, so. Looks pretty good. I can use this other one kind of as a guide. I'm just trying to get these lined up nicely. And I'm just going to scratch a little line. This other one is cut off. Should be able to cut this one off then and have it pretty similar. So, still got this spot where the girdle of the stone is going to rest. So we need to file a little bit of a start in that probably. I'm going to use the edge of my round nose file, or half round file to get a start there. Now, for me to hold something this small, sometimes I'll hold it like this when I'm filing it, and then I'll rest it on something else to get some leverage. And I think that's what I'm going to do. And I may use the Dremel for a little bit of it too, so I'm going to go over to this spot and I'll bring you with me this time. I hope you can see what I'm doing here, but I'm going to go from that notch that I put in there and narrow out the inside. Kind of like file down like that. Let's do the same thing on this side. And you want, this is a white silicone abrasive wheel here. So I may do further refining on, oh no, Okay, after about 10 minutes of crawling around on the ground trying to find this, I finally found it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second one off camera because you saw how I did this one. Then we'll come back and I'm going to do the notches. So be right back. All right, I got them pretty symmetrical. Not too bad anyway. This one's a little bit weird. I'll fix them real quick. So, like I said, I'm going to file an upward notch halfway through this, and then a downward notch halfway through this. Or I'm going to saw, I should say. I have a number 0020 on this one. So a little trick that someone told me a while back. I never was big on sawing, so was using a slot in the wood that you've sawn in order to guide the saw when you're starting it. We'll do the same thing on the other one on the inside of the notch. This one's going to be a little harder to hold. I have to do it over here. No. Saw where that one landed that time. They fit together. So now I'm going to solder these together. Now I'm going to solder these together back at the other area. Let's see if I can find kind of a flattish spot on one of these soft pads. And I'll put the one that's on the underside. Push it in here like that. Try to get it sitting pretty straight up and down. This one got a little bent, so I'm going to try and bend this back. Push him right down over this one. I didn't quite have it all the way down, so I'm going to go ahead and push it the rest of the way down like I just did, and then I'm going to solder this bottom. I'm going to cut a little bit smaller piece of solder. I have relatively large ones on the pad still, so cut something a little bit smaller. These magnesia blocks, which is this soft pad here, are handy when you need to push something down to hold it in place. People use a lot of different products to stabilize something while they're soldering it together. I find these to be handy, but they do break apart pretty quickly. They need to be replaced now and again. One thing I'm a little worried about this sort of a setting in silver is gold is about 3 times as strong as silver. So while I love silver, it doesn't have the durability or the strength that gold does. So if you have very thin prongs, you may run into some problems with silver. So I think being flattened out sideways, they'll be fine, but that's going to go in there. So let's spread these open just a bit. So I'm not sure how strong this will be. I think it'll be okay, but you could always increase the sideways thickness of the prong if you wanted to use a little bit thicker stuff. I wanted it to look kind of like that dainty little thing that my wife's mom had as a engagement ring. I might do a little refining on the filing and stuff, but I think I will use this one. I like this one so far. but I think it needs to be a little bit shorter. So I'm going to file that down that way. So it's going to go just like that. I think the easiest way to solder it on would be to notch the top of the ring just a little bit. So I'm going to quick file a little, or saw a little notch in there that's about wide enough to slide that in. Okay, so I filed a little bit of a notch in the top of the band, so it looks like I already got it positioned, so I'll pull it back out of there. It took me a little bit to get that lined up. But the band is like this. Not very good at freehanding circles. And I filed a little notch just like that. Okay. So now I just positioned it with my third hand. I set the setting on its the top of it and just positioned that so it's pushing down on there lightly. And then I'm just going to solder it on there, hopefully. Chances are there's probably enough solder at the base of that setting in order to get that to solder in there, but I like to have enough to make sure we get a good solid seam. There's also a lot more mass in this band than there is in this little tiny setting at the bottom, so I'm going to heat mostly on the band, and the third hand eats up a lot of heat too, so not always my favorite way of doing things, but I'm gonna let that pickle for a while, and then we'll finalize the little shaping of the prongs, and we'll set the stone after I polish it. So. I'll probably be doing a little cleanup with my rotary tool, which I've done on this. But I want this to get in there securely. Kind of like pops in and stays. So I think for this style, I'm going to have to actually grab it sideways like this and kind of torque it downwards a little bit. All right. That's in there pretty good. I think, like I said, I'm going to round these a little bit with the Dremel and then clean it up and take some pictures. So I'll show you what it looks like after that. Okay, well that was the Lemon Quartz high profile traditional solitaire ring with a 4-prong flat stock setting. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and also take a moment to check out my playlist page. You can see some of the playlists on the main channel page there. It's a great way to sort through the over 270 videos that I've put out over the past couple of years. So they're split up into different categories like rings, pendants, bracelets, also at difficulty levels. So I think those are useful if you're looking for a particular type of thing. So check those out, watch a few more videos, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you. The last thing is check out the video description down below. There's a number of ways if you want to become a supporter of the channel that you can do that. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link, which helps with supplies. There's a merch store where you can get some of that great merch that's branded with my brand, like that design idea book I showed you at the beginning. There's a link to my website where you can buy some jewelry that I've made, some of which I made on the channel, some of which I made off channel. And finally, there's a link to my Patreon stuff if you want to check out more about that. So I'd love to have you sign up for that as well. All right, well, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you coming. Take care. Happy silversmithing.